What's up, Internet? It's Rymar here. Got another episode for you. What are we on? I think this is like episode 7. And today I'm going to talk about the fact that the world of software development is changing so much. The technical world in general is changing so much. And I've been experimenting with some of these AI software development platforms and different tools in the space for a long time. And I just want to talk a little bit about kind of what's happening in the world in the context of lowering the threshold for technical complexity in software all across the board. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, the technical barriers being lowered, my journey from like no code tools to now low code tools and like full code. We're going to talk a little bit about, all these different tools that are flourishing all around us. So I'm going to name a few of them and just share my experience using a couple of them and just talk about how I think soon really we'll all be doing programming of some sort. We'll all be talking to these pieces of technology and they'll be kind of translating that into code and into logical systems and automations and things that you never even thought possible. And you won't need to know anything about how code works. And that's a hell of a journey. So anyway, let's get into it. Okay. All right. We're in it. What's up, y'all? How y'all doing? Yeah? You like it? No? Yes? No? I don't know. Thanks for a few of you who have reached out after the last couple episodes and shared your thoughts and let me know that you're listening to the full episode. That really encourages me to continue to do these. So if you find value in what I'm doing, feel free to let me know. Leave a comment on YouTube, on Spotify, or send me a message on Twitter or wherever you're watching this or listening to this. I'm having fun doing these. I have no idea where any of this is headed, but I really enjoy just kind of running through my thoughts. And anyway, here goes another episode. So, technical barrier being lowered. This is the cool thing about technology in general, right? Because technology opens new doors. And a lot of times we think of technology as digital software because that's what Silicon Valley says technology is. But really, technology is a lot of different things. Agriculture was technology. Fire was technology. The wheel was technology. Like most of the technology actually that we use to build our society, concrete, steel, a lot of things that we just use all around us that build the world around us are technology. And so we shouldn't get lost in this idea that technology only means software. Software is a big piece of the technology world right now because that's kind of what's evolving at a rapid pace. But it's also very interesting to think that like the digital world has progressed so much over the last 10, 20 years, where the physical world has not really evolved that much. And I think it's just an interesting concept because if you go back to my last episode about local first software, I talk a little bit about how these large tech platforms are really trying to extract most of the value out of the system. And I think that's a function of what's happened is that we centralize the creation of technology in these digital spaces and thereby created systems where all of the value, all of the creation, all the benefit goes into these networks, not into like the communities, the culture, society at scale, which is a big problem. But regardless of how you see it, and that's probably for another episode, the technical barrier is being lowered. And what I mean by that is you can do things today that would have required so much effort before, like just publishing a picture on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or any of these platforms that we use on a regular basis is a technological feat. You can take an image and share it with anybody across the world, and within seconds, the whole world can now see this thing that you just experienced. And I don't think we often think about how fundamentally transformational that has been. I think a lot of the stresses that we see in society and things that we just see in the general world are because we have so many of these technologies evolving at every step. And AI is just the I don't want to say the final layer because there's more layers on top of this, but it's a big layer that's happening right now. And it's changing how we all think about technology because you can speak to the computers now, right? It used to be that if you wanted to, talk to a computer, you had to type, and more specifically, you had to write code. You had to learn these programming languages. You had to learn how to speak the language of computers. And now computers are learning to speak the language of humans, which is a very interesting paradigm shift and something we should kind of not take lightly. I don't know where all this is headed. I do think we're kind of in an AI I don't want to say bubble, but it's for sure a hype bubble right now where so many people are thinking like AI is it, it's the next thing. But I think language models are going to hit some kind of threshold for like what they can do. Um, I think it's going to take a long time for these technologies to integrate. I bet we have another 5 to 10 years, just because society moves at a specific pace and technology moves way faster than society. And there's like this adoption curve where lots of people will be using this technology, but by the time your mom is using it or your grandma's using it, or, like it's kind of infiltrated everything. Think about how slow some of the adoption has been to other technologies that, especially if you're kind of in the tech space a little bit, and you see how like far on the cutting edge you are versus maybe you talk to some of your friends who like are not even on a computer most of the day or don't even have like a laptop, or they're just not interacting with this stuff on a regular basis. It's going to take a long time for this stuff to trickle down into usable ways for all of these folks. But for sure, the technical barrier to speaking computer, to building things on a computer, to building software, to building apps, etc., is being lowered quite a bit. And that's nothing new, right? I started tinkering with WordPress back in like 2011, 2012. And at the time, WordPress was a fairly technical solution. It had been out for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years at the time, maybe a little earlier. I think WordPress was like 2004, 5, 6, somewhere in there, before the iPhone for sure. iPhone was 07. And when I started playing with it, it had just kind of gotten to the phase where themes were becoming really powerful. And you could start editing with these theme builders, and you didn't have to really worry about the code of building in WordPress. You didn't have to write PHP. You didn't have to deal with any of this stuff. You didn't have to deal with the servers. You could go with one click, install WordPress, and then get this theme editor, and you could start building very simple interfaces on the web. And over the next few years, WordPress evolved and the theme builders evolved, and they're still evolving. WordPress is still a very powerful tech platform. But now there's all these other tools like Webflow and Framer and Toddle and all these other tools that now let you build more complicated, more custom interfaces on the web, and you don't necessarily have to use a theme. They abstract the code in other ways. And so what a lot of these platforms do is they abstract the complexity of writing code to building something usable for end users, which is really the goal, right? If you want to build an app, you don't give a shit about writing the code or what database software you use or what front-end software you use. All you want to know is that your people who interact with the software can use the thing you build and that it brings them value. And so we've seen this whole thing. And if you've been crossing my paths, anything over the last 5 years, like I've been an evangelist in the no-code space. I've been super active in the Webflow community for a long time. And as a web developer, as a online tinkerer, as an explorer of these new technologies, I found so much power. Going back, I think in 2011, 2012, I started playing with WordPress. In 2017, I found Webflow. And when I found Webflow, I felt like such a big piece of me had been unlocked. Because for so long, with the design background and with like the mind that I have, this tinkering mind that I have that just loves to build and kind of express ideas visually, I had always been limited with WordPress because the theme builders kind of restricted you to playing inside of their sandbox. You could sure style a theme, you could add new content, but you're kind of limited to what you could do. Whereas when Webflow came around, you could do anything. And it took me 6 months, maybe 7 months to really fully understand Webflow because I had to learn the box model and CSS and HTML, because Webflow is an abstraction on front-end code. It's an abstraction on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that was a whole new world that opened up for me. Because now I could take these ideas that were in my head and I could make them real visually, at least. And so Webflow doesn't have like back-end logic. There's tools like Wiz, and there's other things you can build. You can put JavaScript into Webflow to do some back-end stuff. But Webflow is mostly about building front ends and kind of designing visually on the web. But that unlocked like a whole new world for me because I could just tinker and take the thoughts that I had in my head, the designs I had in my head, and there were no longer any limitations for what I could build. I could just express myself fully visually. And I still think that's an amazing superpower. Like it still boggles my mind sometimes when I build things and I'm like, oh shit, you built that, Rymar. Or people see it and they're like, who built this? I'm like, I did, and that's still such a wild experience to know. But I always had this like limitation where like it wasn't full code, it was no code. And this whole no code idea is that you don't have to like learn the coding languages. You can kind of visually abstract these tools. And that's what Webflow is. Webflow is like Photoshop, if you know anything about Photoshop, or any tool that like is just a visual canvas that you can play inside of. And you can just move things around, except for it spits out the code. So like Webflow writes the code for you. It's not that there's no code involved. It's just that you don't have to learn the semantics, because programming languages are kind of semantically structured. They're very technical. If you miss a comma in a certain place, if you don't close a parentheses properly, like, in English, if you misspell a word, like, you can still kind of get the gist of what it's saying, but computers don't work that way. If you miss a comma, or if you miss like some of the syntax in a programming language, like, the just program doesn't work. And so it's very structured the way software works. And so the whole no code movement was essentially saying, don't worry about that. We'll take care of that back end for you. You just visually work inside of these tools. And again, there's some limitations inside of there, but we'll write the code for you. And that was just like a huge paradigm shift. And probably from like 2017 to just recently, the no code movement was a massive, like, and it's still a big deal on the web world, right? Like, people still talk about no code. If you Google no code, you're going to find more resources than you could like imagine to kind of discover these tools. But we're now entering this other phase where, just like no code said, don't worry about the code, just kind of come in this visual canvas and tinker and push and move and, play with what you want, and we'll write the code for you. Now you have these AI interfaces evolving where you can basically, in plain language, explain what you would like to build, and the thing will build it for you. And if you're not keeping up, like, even things, I mean, ChatGPT is a wonderful tool in that context, where like I've done this where, like, I needed to write a JavaScript function to do something on a website. I go and I explain what I want it to do, tick, 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 like I write for a minute and it gives me the code. And then I put that into some kind of platform, some kind of code editor. And then I run it, I run the code, or I host the file somewhere, and then that function works. And if it doesn't work, then I go back to ChatGPT and I say, hey, this is the error I'm getting, or it doesn't work, or how can we fix this, or I need to add this functionality. And I just talk to this thing, and all of a sudden I get to a place where, again, I don't even now need to fiddle with the thing on the screen. I'm just talking to it in plain language and saying, I want to accomplish this task. How do I do that? And I don't need to know all of the different languages involved. The thing does it for me. And that was a big leap. But now we have these tools like Replit and Cursor and Copilot. Replit is its own software platform. Cursor is a AI-based software IDE development environment. And Copilot lives inside of VS Code or GitHub, or no, VS Code. And it's just kind of like, again, it's your Copilot, right? So as you write, it's predicting things that you might want to do. It's understanding the files that you're working with, and it's kind of prompting or kind of predicting what you might want to enter, or how you might want to use data, or filling in blanks where, again, things that like would have taken you a lot of mental capacity to do, the AI is doing this for you. And the reason I'm doing this episode specifically is because just recently, again, going back from my journey from WordPress to Webflow to now playing with these AI tools, I am now pushing code, they're called pull requests, into GitHub. And GitHub is a place where you store your code and where lots of people can kind of collaborate on code. And then that code lives in GitHub. It runs from GitHub, but it runs on on different servers. And it's basically how like a lot of modern companies manage and source control and version control their code. And they allow other people to collaborate on the code. We're not going to get into GitHub right now. But that had always been like a barrier for me, right? So talking about reducing the technical barrier, I've tried to learn how to code so many times. Like, I can't tell you the number of times over the last decade that I've tried to take a code boot camp, or took some course online, or, just tried to learn the syntax of a programming language. And I always picked up concepts. I always understood pieces of it. I could kind of follow along and do the dummy experiments, or the Hello World projects, or build the To-Do app, or build the Blackjack app, or kind of do whatever they were walking me through. But when it came time to like build my own thing and get kind of complex outputs, not just these basic apps, I always hit a brick wall. And the reason behind that is like modern web development, modern software development is very complex. It's not just learning HTML and CSS. You have to learn a database language. You have to learn a front end language. You have to learn some kind of like responsive JavaScript framework to make your app responsive. So something like React or Angular, or now there's things like Vue and Svelte, and like there's all these different things kind of evolving. React is really the mainstream, kind of everyone's using React. So there's like, you don't have to just learn one language when you want to write code. It's like, if you want to speak Spanish, you just have to learn Spanish. If you want to learn German, you just have to learn German. But when you want to learn to write code, you have to learn like 6 different languages, right? You have to learn the back end language, the front end language, and then not only that, but then you have to figure out how to talk to themselves. And then you have all these different files that kind of like need to work together in one like combined environment. And it gets really complex. Like, it's incredibly complex to do this stuff, which is why the people who do it get paid really big bucks. But now these things like Replit and Cursor, Cursor AI is the platform I've been using. Replit is also a platform I've been using. Both of them are kind of like integrated development environments that pull in artificial intelligence. Replit also lets you deploy with one click the code that you write. Cursor, you still have to kind of host your files on a server somewhere and deploy that in a static environment somewhere else. And so those are complexities we're not going to dive into. But both of them are coding environments that let you not only see and explore the code, but then interact with some AI environment where I can highlight a piece of code and say, what is this doing? I can talk to it and say, I need the code to do this now, and it will propose changes to the code that I just have to click accept or copy and paste into the file. And next thing you know, I have updated software that is, basically it's writing the code for me. So again, if we go back to what I was saying about Webflow, where you just kind of tinker in this interface and it writes the code for you, now we're in a space where I just have to talk to this thing, and literally in plain language, I write prompts, I work through it, and it gives me code, and then I paste the code into an environment, one of these IDEs, Replit or Cursor, and I can then run that locally on my machine, put that into the interwebs, and next thing you know, I have a working application. And my biggest dream, my biggest like thing that I've wanted for the last decade easily, is to be able to meet the developers on the battlefield, right? To not have to rely on them for every little piece of the update that I need to do, because it's very difficult when you have an idea, if you're an idea guy, or if you're a product guy or gal, if you're a person with an idea in your head that you want to bring out into the world, it's very difficult to try to translate that to somebody so that they can build exactly what you want. You always want to get hands-on. You always want to like tinker with it. You want to experiment with it. And that can get very expensive, because software developers, again, get paid a lot of money to do what they do. And it's very expensive to have them iterate on stuff. And it's just a wild, wild world we're living in, where you can literally, first of all, talk to the machine. So just the fact that these LLMs, like if you've not played with a ChatGPT or a Claude or any of these like sophisticated large language models, Grok on Twitter, Facebook's got their own Llama, like there's all these language models that you can kind of play with now. And it's just fascinating to see how sophisticated it is. Like, I just never thought that you'd be talking to these things, that you could type to this, ask it questions, and it would just speak to you like a human. And not only that, but it seems like they're exceptionally good at writing code. And so to be able to tell it, hey, I need to build a browser extension that does XYZ. I need to be able to do this and manipulate this way, and it just spits out the code. It tells you what libraries you need to install, and you just press a button and it installs the library, and you press another button and it brings the code in, or it adapts the code, and then maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, and you just try it again. And it's just wild, because again, a guy like me now has been pushing code to GitHub on a live project that I've been building for a while. If you know anything about my backstory, I'm building this tool called Atmos. It's a collaborative publishing tool. And it's been a journey of trying to build this piece of software, and again, relying on other folks to build every aspect of this thing that lives inside of my head, which is very expensive. It's very time consuming. Luckily, I've got great partners, and so some of the cost has been abstracted because they're investing their time into this project now. But it's still like one of those things where I want to tinker more than somebody else is ever going to put their time in, because I always want to tinker with it. It's my idea. Like, I always want to be trying to figure out how to make it better, how to like improve this feature or that feature or whatever. And so now having the ability to go into something like Cursor, to go into one of these platforms and just like I would talk to the developer and say, I want it to do this, except for, like it costs me $20 a month instead of $100 an hour or $200 an hour, right? To like for a software developer. And And they don't get angry when you change your mind and you like spend 3 hours with it and you're like, that doesn't work. Let's try something else. Like I just throw it out and start from scratch. And the AI doesn't care. Just like literally does not get angry at me because I've like changed my mind, or I've changed scope, or I've decided that I want to do something, else that, I hadn't thought about before. And, this just I don't really know what I'm trying to say here other than like, what the fuck is actually happening? Like, this is so cool. Like, we literally are in the middle of the future. A lot of people talk about like the future is coming, but no, the future is like right now. And it's only going to get better. Like, this is the worst it's ever going to be. And it's pretty freaking good already. And so, first of all, if you're not playing with these things and you're slightly technically minded or have any kind of technical savvy, you should like go create an account, go start playing with these tools, and not just like asking it silly stuff. Like, ask it to help you do a specific task, something that you never thought you'd be able to do. Like, challenge it. Don't just ask it a question about like an advanced search query. Don't ask it like silly shit. Like sure, do that stuff. Like, do whatever you want, but try to have it do something that you just never imagined it could do. And I'm not saying it's perfect. There's all sorts of hurdles I run into. The things hallucinate. It tells me errors. It suggests things that sometimes don't work. And again, thank God I have a really capable team that's helping me, like check my code and make sure that the stuff that goes out into our production servers is secure and doesn't break other things in the system, because we have a browser extension and a software and a web app, and there's a server stuff that has to happen. And like, there's lots of things, like lots of moving parts. And so I have a good team also around me doing this stuff. But if you go online and you see like what people are building, it is absolutely mind-boggling what people have been able to accomplish with just these LLMs, just talking to their computers, sitting here typing just like you would. Like, you have to be descriptive, you have to be specific, you have to be precise. So, like, it takes a little bit of discipline on your side to just type out all the requirements and really learn how these platforms work. But we are entering a phase where like we are all software developers now. We all have the potential to become fully technically capable people. If you speak fluent language, all of us speak, and you have any kind of logic and reasoning skills, like, you're a programmer now, right? Programming and writing code are two totally different worlds now, right? It used to be that if you wanted to be a programmer, you had to learn how to write code. Those two were fully aligned tracks. And now those two tracks are diverging. You can be a programmer without writing code. Now, this is not to say like, there's going to be developers out there like, it's bullshit. It's not going to do the part. It can't do what I can do. I understand, right? It's not the be all end all. There's still a lot of things that I cannot do with this tool that a very talented software developer can do. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is it has allowed me to do so many things that I had never been able to do before this moment that it's boggling my mind. And it allows me to, again, be a more effective part of this software team that I'm a part of this startup that I'm a part of. And as I work with my clients who are also technical startups and software companies, it gives me another layer of understanding about what they're building, what they're doing, how the code works. And it's like demystifying this thing that for so long had just been a black box. And I think that's the interesting part of this, is that soon you will just be speaking to these systems, whether it's your phone, whether it's your virtual assistant, whatever it is. Like, we're all going to have these things at our disposal at kind of every facet of our lives, where you will just now be able to talk to these systems and accomplish things beyond your wildest imagination. And I think that's an amazing paradigm. I don't know how you feel about technology. Some people are super apprehensive about this stuff. I'm kind of like of the mindset that I don't think we can stop it. So why not figure out how to embrace it and kind of learn from it and, let it just become what it becomes. So yeah, I don't really know where this is all headed, but it's just so exciting to be alive in this moment, right? Of all the times to ever be alive, to be in the phase where we're literally going to watch the machines come to life. It's as scary as it is fantastic, but what the fuck, right? If you were born 100 years ago or 200 years ago or 500 years ago, and probably like, okay, let's say more than 200 to 300, let's say more than 300 years ago. and you got plopped 1,000 years ago, like, not that crazy. And if you were 500 years ago and you got plopped 1,000, like 2,000, like there just wasn't that much different, you know? But if you were like 50 years ago and you got plopped into today, if you were 100 years ago and you got plopped into today, you'd be like, what the fuck is this? Like, you just wouldn't even understand that you can like real time communicate with everyone. This technology that was just fantasy land is now real, and that we all have it in our pockets, and that we all take it for granted. And even worse, that all we use it for is to share memes and fucking talk shit and let, the government spy on us. Like, what? And so it's like this double-edged sword that like all this technology is fantastic. It's amazing. I think it's beautiful. It's allowing people to build, to their heart's content. But just like any interesting technology, right? Fire can warm your house or it can burn down the fucking neighborhood, right? Like electricity, can shock you to death or it can turn the lights on all around you. I mean, this is not the first time we've come across a technology that is a double-edged sword, and we're not really sure what the full potential of it is or how people are going to use it, right? Nuclear energy can either blow up a fucking state or it can power a city for fucking next to nothing, like cost-wise. And so technology in general is just a fascinating thing. And to be a part of this phase in our like evolution, where I can imagine 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, people be writing books and wondering what it was like to be around at the birth of this moment. And we're here. We get to do that. Like, we get to see it. I was born in 1983. We were buying internet by the hour on AOL, right? Like, I lived through fax machines. I had a pager in high school. Like, and now I have this, and I have AI, and I'm talking to the fucking machines, and they're doing work for me. And so I don't know what comes next, but it's just going to get crazier. And to me, that's so exciting. I don't know. I think I'm going to leave it at that, but it's just a wild world. We're all developers now. We all have the capabilities to build things. And this is where I think it becomes incumbent on us to actually figure out how to use these tools for good, how to use these tools to maybe build things for our friend. For a long time, software only came from one place. It came from Silicon Valley. It came from, big money operations. And now you could build software. I could build software. We can all build software, and we can build software that's, secure. It's private. It's for us. It's, it's only for 10 people, for 50 people, for 100, for 1,000 people. It doesn't have to be for millions and millions of people. And that, again, is also a paradigm, because it puts you in control of your digital kind of footprint, of your future, of the way you interact and communicate and share information with all these people. And it allows us to create communities again, tight-knit, smaller communities of folks that are just kind of like really interested in very niche subjects. And to me, again, that's fascinating, because I think we have a lot of problems to solve in society, and technology can help us solve those problems, but not, we don't need AI friends. What we need is AI to help us build things that allow us to connect in the real world. You see all these AI startups and the Humane Pin and the Friends startup that's like a little thing that hangs from your neck, and like you press the button and it like, it's listening to you all the time. Like, we don't need a fucking fake friend that's creating some type of surrogate connection. Like, that's not what we need. What we need is human connections, and we need tools to help us, figure out how to do that. How to like build more meaningful connections in the real world using technology, not how to leverage technology to build fake connections in a digital world that, continue to separate us or make us feel, like we're disconnected as a species. So, it's up to us, really, I guess is what I'm saying. We're all developers now. You are a developer. I'm a developer. We all have the ability to go in and build these things. And I want to see what you're building. Like, let me know what you're building. Share in the comments. Like, we've talked about doing some meetups or some Twitter spaces, or I don't know how this is all evolving, but stay tuned. Lots is coming. This is a fantastically amazing time. It's also a scary time, so don't take it all for granted, but don't be scared to experiment, and don't write this stuff off as like stupid or trivial or hype. There is a lot of hype. There are a lot of people talking shit and kind of saying this is the be all end all. It's not, right? It's just a very powerful tool that can now be in your toolbox, and you'd be silly not to start experimenting with it. So anyway, that's that. That's episode number 7. We're all developers now. Again, if you made it to the end of this thing, or if you have any thoughts about how you're using AI or how this technology is going to continue to evolve, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to know what you're building, right? If you're building something cool, share your link in the comments also. Share it with me on Twitter or YouTube, or again, wherever you're catching this. I will for sure take a look at all those. And yeah, stay tuned for how I try to evolve this into meetups locally. If you're in Sarasota, we're doing the Sarasota Tech meetups. But also, I think we're going to start doing some like dialectics, some debates, some stuff where we just come hang out and talk about interesting stuff like AI, software development, or recently we had a conversation in our WhatsApp group about the founder of Telegram being jailed in France for another. Maybe that's a whole another episode. So we're doing lots of stuff locally. But also I've been talking about getting into live streaming or doing more Twitter spaces in the digital world. So anyway, if you're interested in that and you're listening to this, let me know in the comments if that's something you would be all about. And yeah, we'll see where this evolves. But anyway, we'll leave it at that. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you in the next episode.